In today's episode, we're going to cover 5 criminally underrated writing tips that will absolutely change the way you go about writing. This is not the usual lineup of tips that you see on most videos, blogs, podcasts, etc. You will even struggle to find these in my own content. I have selected these specifically because they are not brought up frequently, not brought up enough, and they can absolutely and completely change the way you go about writing. So don't go anywhere, covering them right now. This episode of Write Bites is sponsored by Copy AI, a toolkit that helps writers, marketers, and freelancers skip writer's block completely and quickly create first draft copy for themselves and their clients. If you'd like to get a free 30-day trial of Copy AI, head on over to copy.ai/Jacob and sign up. So let's start with number 1. Never, ever, 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 ever write from scratch. This is probably the number 1 mistake that I see new writers make when they come in. And it's kind of ironic because in most industries, you don't just come up and make shit up. You come in and you copy what the experts are doing. And for whatever reason, a lot of new writers have sort of missed that memo. They come in thinking that the top copywriters are making everything up from scratch, that everything they do is just pulled out of their own inner wells of creativity, and they could not be more wrong. The truth is actually the exact opposite. The best copywriters work off of templates. They work off of frameworks. They work off of proven models that have either been used in the industry for decades or that other writers, other brands have already proven in the space. So if I'm sitting down to write a sales page for a client, I'm not just looking at a blank page and randomly generating ideas for how to approach the sales sequence. What I'm going to do first and foremost is go look at their most successful competitors and see what their sales pages look like. Because those sales pages are not just a best guess from some other copywriter. Those have been tweaked and evolved and proven across hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars of ad spend. And the longer you work in marketing, the more you understand that any initial draft, any initial page is just a best guess that then needs to be shown to live customers, and that's when you really know how it's going to perform. And you are going to progressively improve the copy over time in accordance with how a real audience is responding. So anytime you sit down to write a new piece of copy, you want to go look at what the most successful people in the space are doing and start there. Now, you're not going to finish there, but you are going to start from that framework and decide how to evolve and adjust to the unique company and audience that you're working with off of that initial set of ideas. Now, if you're working in a space that's brand new, or if there really aren't any direct competitors, or maybe you're working with the top company in the space and they've been just been kind of doing random messaging up till now, what you can do is pull from a laundry list of proven copywriting frameworks that work across industries and have worked for decades. Whatever you do, do not write from scratch. Okay, and that leads us to the second part. This is kind of in a similar vein. Steal your customers' words. Okay, when you come in to write new copy for a project, not only do I not want you starting from scratch, not only do I not want you trying to just derive everything out of your own inner creativity, I want you to go out and grab the real feedback from the customers that this company already has and pull your language directly from that. If there aren't any customers, you can pull the language from the client. Make sure you're asking a really in-depth questionnaire that's going to force them to generate a lot of ideas and phrases. But ideally, we want to be pulling language directly from the customer's mouth because they're the one we're selling to. You're not selling to yourself. You're not selling to the business owner. You're not selling to any random collection of consumers. You're selling to this specific customer group. And the way they describe the product is the way you want to describe the product. Okay, let's move on to tip number 3. Replace long words with short words. Now, the impact of this tip is going to have a lot to do with your personal writing background. If you are someone who never really considered themselves a great writer, you weren't necessarily, great in literature class, things like that, you kind of came to copywriting by more of the business persuasion and sales angle, then this actually may not be a big deal for you. You might already be writing in a fairly conversational tone, using the type of language that people speak to each other in real life. But for a large portion of my audience, a lot of my readers, a lot of the people who are attracted to the professional writing opportunities that the copywriting field provides often come from more of a literature or academic writing background. And if that's you, this is probably one of the best tips you'll ever hear, because up until this point in your career, you've associated good writing with an extensive vocabulary, the ability to incorporate words that have a bit more nuance, which are often longer. But the thing you have to understand is that in copywriting, we are writing to a specific audience of typical consumers. And any place where you're using more advanced vocabulary or longer words is often going to hurt your copy's performance more than it helps. If you come from more of a literature background, if like myself, you're a very avid fiction reader, then a great way to evaluate your copy after you've written it is to go through and look for big or more advanced words and edit them down into their more simple and shorter alternatives. Number 4, use comparisons and analogies to make your points. Comparisons and analogies are always a powerful mechanism in writing, but they are especially helpful when you are attempting to relay ideas that are a bit more complex. An analogy can take something that is unknown or unfamiliar and connect it with something that's known, that's familiar, that already has emotions attached to it. So when you're attempting to create a narrative around something new, something that maybe the reader is not already familiar with, you can immediately attach it to something they are familiar with, something that they already have emotions connected to that you want to tap into as the writer. Additionally, if you do it right, it can create a more poetic feel to your copy. It can make it more enjoyable, more personable. It's a more interesting style of writing to read when you can incorporate these comparisons and analogies. It can make for an overall more enjoyable reading experience in general. Number 5, go out of your way to eliminate uncertainty for the reader to an absurd degree. Now, what I mean here is you want to be exhaustively granular with setting exact step-by-step expectations for the reader when they're considering making a purchase or moving forward, taking the action that you want them to take. What's going to show up on the next screen? What is going to be asked of them after this? What is the process that you're going to take them through? What can they expect? How many days until the thing they're ordering arrives? How many steps do they need to read through if they're participating in something? The more you can be just ridiculously specific about what comes next, the more you eliminate uncertainty for the reader and make it real easy for them to say yes. Now, obviously, if there's certain aspects of what comes next that you don't think will be as appealing, then maybe you're going to gloss over those. But what tends to happen is that businesses and brands will really go out of their way to create a very favorable follow-up or delivery or fulfillment process, whatever it is that they're doing. They take a lot of care in the details. They know that every little bit can be impactful for the reader. But then they completely forget to tell the reader about that. They completely forget to relay all the things that they're doing to make this a great experience for the reader, lead customer after they say yes, after they take the action. So one of the best things you can do when you're looking to give a call to action or move the reader towards that action, move them to that point, is to very explicitly lay out everything that comes next. And go further than you think. Whatever you think is the appropriate amount to lay out, I can tell you 9 times out of 10, you should go past that. It should be even more granular, even more specific. There should be no question marks. So that's it. Let's review real quick. Number 1, never, ever, ever write from scratch. Pull from either a proven copywriting framework or look at what your top competitors in the space are doing and use that as a starting point. Number 2, when it comes to the actual language and words that you're using, steal as much from the actual customers of the brand as you possibly can. you want to speak to them in their own language. It's not about you. It's not about the tone or language that you can personally come up with. Obviously, you'll have to come up with part of it, but you want to really pull from the real customer base as much as possible. Number 3, replace long words with short words, particularly if you're coming from a more literary or academic background. You want to probably tone down the vocabulary and the length of sentences, length of words that you're doing, and make it more conversational, more easily relatable for the average reader. Number 4, use comparisons and analogies to tap into familiarity, to tap into existing emotions that come along with other things, and leverage those emotions, leverage that familiarity when presenting something new to a reader. And number 5, go out of your way to an absurd degree to eliminate uncertainty for the reader, for the lead, for the potential customer. Well, that wraps it up. Hope this episode was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.